Evening and welcome to the Shaker Lane School Building Committee meeting, August 23rd. Short agenda, but a lot of information to get to. We have plan updates, cost estimates overview, outline, special town meeting presentation that's coming up. So right now I'll turn it over to Studio G. We have some updates to the numbers.
Great. Do we need to do introductions? No, we're good. No, conference. So I'm at this point. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us this evening. We're going to be doing a design update. We shared a lot of this information last week when we were here. So we're going to give a higher level this time, but I welcome everyone to check the LGTV as far as seeing previous design iterations that we've been exploring. What everyone's most excited to see are the cost estimate updates, and then prepare us for the special town meeting, which is happening next Tuesday. So again, we always start with project goals. This is our baseline, what we always come back to when tough decisions need to be made as far as the project goes. And then, of course, we have our friends at the MSBA, which are keeping us on track for this project. So essentially, last week we gave a pretty robust design project update. Today, we're here to talk about the cost. So that orange colored in box, orange for October. Then next October 29th, we're going to talk to the community special town meeting, which we're excited to give our 10-minute overview. We're the first article, so looking forward to sharing where we are in the progress. And then the following next school building committee meeting on November 6th, we are going to determine, the SBC is going to look at which design option we're going to move into schematic design, which is the next module as part of the MSBA process.
All right, so looking around, it seems like nearly everybody here was here last week, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time rehashing this information. We can talk about it more at the end once we get through the concept, if anybody is interested. So this slide was just about the work that's been done to reduce the square footage from when we first looked at it back in August. This is an explanation of the square footage and where it's coming from. A couple of caveats on here. In the MSBA guidelines, they have a really small number for special education, and that's because they allow districts to really customize their own programs. So they have a lot of leeway in here in terms of the districts being able to really customize that for themselves. Next caveat is the MSBA guidelines does not include pre-K, so that number is 0. And so third caveat down here is if you factor in the district special ed programs plus the pre-K, the MSBA baseline number would be closer to 86,000. So that's really the number that we're comparing it to. Right now, for the new construction option, we're at just over 97,000, and for the ad reno, it's a little bit under that. This, to give a visual representation, sometimes staring at these numbers is not the most easily understood. For these particular categories that I've called out here, these are major deficits that the school has right now. Like, for example, the most striking example is their existing gymnasium is less than half of what it's supposed to be. The media center is dramatically undersized. Other spaces are really undersized. So this is just to really draw attention to where some of the square footage is coming from and why the new option is so much larger than existing school. All right, we have 3 options that we are considering now. We will be narrowing this down on November 6th. First option is an addition renovation where we have a new addition here that is classroom wings, a few other spaces, but we're calling it an academic addition. Then a new full-size gymnasium. We are demolishing the existing academic wing and then keeping this portion of the existing school. And then for a quick peek inside, this is what it looks like. The majority of the school will be single level, and then the portion of the school that is 2 levels is the academic wing. So there would be new elevator and stairs associated with this initiative. The other thing I want to point out on these is the division between community use spaces versus school use only spaces, because I think that is an important factor when it comes into selecting which one of these options is the best choice for the district, because it's a town project. It's going to benefit everybody in the community. So this is an important thing to look at. Next option is a new construction option on what we're calling the upper field, both because it's further to the north and it's also higher in elevation. This would be able to be fully constructed while the existing school is in session, so minimal disruptions to the students as they go through this process. Safe, separate passages for a bus loop and car loop. And then peeking inside, we have, you'll notice it's very different from your typical corridor arrangement. We have a cluster of classrooms around a central learning area. Each one of these clusters is a grade level. So on the first floor, we've got preschool and kindergarten, and upstairs we have first grade and second grade. On this one, the community use spaces are here, directly off of the entry lobby. And the school use only is more protected in the back with the play area in the back with all of the wooded area around here. So what this does is it takes everything from this part of the building and down, and that is potentially available for community use. Okay. Oops. All right, third update is new construction on the lower field. This one is also able to be fully constructed while the existing pool is in use to minimize disruption to the students. On the inside, this is arranged similar to the other one where the community use spaces are right here off the lobby. So after hours, people can come in and have direct access to those spaces without accessing the rest of the school. That includes a media center up on the second floor. I'd like to point out these plans are still very diagrammatic, and we will be pushing, whichever one is selected, will be pushing the design forward and making big advancements. So the final design might look pretty different from this, but the concepts are here of what the district would like to achieve. So on this one, the community use area would be sort of in the core here, plus the upper field, which would go down to just one baseball or softball diamond. The other one is needed for room for the school. And then this space right here, once the existing building is demolished, that can be opened up for recreation soccer fields. Okay, any questions on those options before I move on? Yes.
If you could just on the last you mentioned you had talking about the two
Yeah.
fields, ball fields.
Yep.
So below where it says option 3.2, where this looks like a parking lot, right?
Yep.
That's where it's called Ken White, the gravel field. That's a softball field now.
Oh, yes.
So that,
Here.
so that one. No, below.
Below it.
Yeah. So right now there's three diamonds down there.
Yes.
There's diamond with dugouts, which is closest to.
Yeah.
Go through the wood path. There's one to your right. There's one out again, the upper
Yes,
field, as you call
yes,
it.
that's right.
So the one that's closest to the existing playground is called Ken White. That is eliminated.
Correct.
So.
Yep.
The field in the back is Cooper, just for people better understand what do you mean by upper field. And this field with 3.2 on it is called the Shaker Lane.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody
Thank you.
else? All right. So we started off this process with 6 options and they were narrowed down to 3 back at the end of the first phase of this. The Shaker Lane School Building Committee decided together on a list of evaluation criteria to apply to all of those options. They went through an exercise of individually ranking each option in terms of how well they successfully met all of these goals. And then after that was done, there were 3 pretty clear front runners to this process. So now we are going to do something very similar again. The SBC is going to look at this and see if they want to make any tweaks or additions or reword anything, make sure that they're still happy with this list. Once that's agreed upon, then they will evaluate all three options again. And out of that, we will end up with a single selection. That's probably gonna be a lot of discussion that happens. It's not just gonna be fill out a number and whatever wins. There will be discussion. The cost is going to be included in this discussion, but it's going to be more heavily weighed than a lot of the other components. So there's a lot that goes into this decision other than just cost for educational impact or sustainability. It's a huge list of things. It's a really tough decision to make. It's very important for the town, the district. And so it's important that as much thought and care as possible goes into making this decision. The goal is to reach an agreement on which option is best and vote for it during the November 6th SMC meeting. Any comments or questions?
So, excuse me, so it's just the SLBC that's taking that survey because other stakeholders already had their input earlier in the process?
That's it.
So, we're about to show you what estimates came back. We had, the PM&C, our cost estimator, as well as TTH had cost estimator to look at the material that was put before them to estimate, the options that we've been looking at and, showed you last week. We had those for about a day, so there was a lot of work, put in to level those. They're not exactly the same at this point, but they're close enough to be considered level. So the numbers that you see will be, you know, the considered the level estimate between those two estimators. We will likely have some time to continue to look at those numbers before that vote that Mary Lee's talking about. We'll also be talking about the MSBA reimbursements. Those that would be the portion that the MSBA could contribute to this project. We know that they will, since we're in this MSBA project pathway. However, what we don't know is the exact number. So the ranges that we'll show you is based on the best information that we have now and historic information that we've had so far. But basically what happens is at some point, after schematic design, there's an agreement with the MSBA, and that percentage is agreed on at that time. And throughout the life of the project, that will be the maximum number that the MSBA would contribute to the project. So let's take a look at the next slide. So these are the numbers that came back. You can see three options here. On the left, sort of in grayed out, was what the numbers were last. So as we expected, with some efficiencies in the actual laying out of the plans, the cost began to come down because we were able to tighten up the size of the building. And you'll see really the new construction options are fairly close. And the real difference there is site cost. And some of that, we're at a very early stage. I think we could achieve the site costs in similar site costs for either 3.1 or 3.2. So when you look at those numbers, even though it's about $1 million apart, you can consider those relatively equal by the time more design thought is put into this.
Steve, if I may, so by stating that it's design, that it's the site costs, essentially, the upper field is further away, therefore the utilities would have to be constructed further away from where they currently are.
That's a
With
large
that,
part, right, in the current estimate. However, it is possible that the utilities could come off of the other road. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a little too early to tell if that's for sure that we'd have to run that much utilities. So
From
right now.
existing, where it's coming
Exactly,
from
right,
now.
on Roxbury. So, so that's the piece that, you know, with what we know now, based on the narratives that were put together, that is a large difference. That's correct, in utilities, because it's all new utilities that we're running. And really from Main Street. The building difference, this is a very this isn't broken down as much as we have on the estimate, so this is digestible here. But the building cost between the two is within 100,000 in the estimate, so. And, you know, just to remember on the ag reno column, that is a smaller building, and even though it is less expensive, it would not yield as much of a, it does not fulfill the program requirements as successfully as as the new construction options do, just because of the limitation of the piece that would be kept during the renovation. So,
Could I ask what the difference is, and I probably said this, but between the estimated total project cost and the construction manager at risk? Could you do that real quick?
There's two delivery methods that, chapter 149, 149A, that the MSBA would like you to investigate
Okay,
on the project. TDP is design bid build, which is what was the normal method for many years, where an architect puts together a full set of documents, they put it out to bid, general contractor bids on it, they bid the building.
Okay.
Construction manager at risk, 149A in Massachusetts law, has a contractor / construction manager join the project in design development, construction documents, and look at potential savings, either at early bid packages or different equipment. They try to bring in savings at the time. The difference is they're held to what they call a guaranteed maximum price. When they finish working with the architects, they come out at the end and say, this project's gonna cost you $90 million, not a penny more. And they have to stay to that as they go through constructing it.
okay,
So there's two methods that we will investigate with the committees, the best method that will be for this project. And there is a significant difference in cost. It's like a 6% upgrade.
Yeah.
So you'll see $4 or $5 million difference in.
but it's a
TDP.
guarantee against overruns? Is it, but the construction manager is a guarantee against
Well, it's-
overruns?
They were supposed to produce a guaranteed maximum price as part of their process.
Okay,
So, but they're involved early, so you're paying them.
yeah,
That's where the difference in the costs are gonna be, but, so if you're into a very complicated project, a lot of phasing, a lot of like early site work, early seal work, whatever, it's worth it having someone to organize all those parts. If you've got a project standing alone and it's kind of easy, maybe TBP is the best way to go. So that's something that as we continue with what option is being determined, we'll work with the committee and the MSP to determine what the best delivery method.
the construction manager at risk, is there, do they also go help us find grants? Things, monies that federal and state might have for little tiny towns that really need a new school?
not typically we need.
Not typically.
But what they do in those looking for cost opportunities is, as Mark was saying, they would be involved. They can put out construction packages while we're still finishing design. So, and what that allows, let's say there would be a plan because they're involved very early on. So they would help the district determine based on schedule needs and market conditions.
Mhm.
If there are things that should happen early.
Mhm.
Site work is often one of those things,
Mhm.
but an example of a recent project that we did, the long span metal joists were very hard to get 3 years ago.
Right,
So they knew those had to be bought very early. So they worked with us and our structural engineer to decide all the things that we need to know. We fixed those design points. Okay, we're gonna decide this is what it's gonna be. We won't change that, even though we're still designing the rest of the building. But those were able to be ordered so that
Mhm.
by the time the construction actually needed it, they were there.
so there's no delay, so it's, there was, so that if they don't guarantee against cost overruns, their job is to do their best to keep it from happening.
Yeah, there are many pieces that they bring to, there's a lot of value that they bring to the project, but it is a decision, the cost is because they're very involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, they have a lot of staff that's bringing that value to to the project.
Thank you so much. I had no idea.
Just so you know, the library and the senior center, Center Shattuck were both built under Seymour.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Proved to be, I would ask Jim and Ryan, I think they proved to be worth their weight.
Oh, cost overrun guarantee not is really a good thing. Cost overruns are real.
Library was a very unique site as well, so there's a lot there.
Yeah, I would just, the caveat I would put to that too is that, you know, anything that's initiated by the owner, for change orders of that sort is not within the guaranteed price. So, so when, you know, the guaranteed price is within the things that are in their control, but if the owner comes to them and says, you know, we want another closet at this space that wasn't in the original design, so that is something that would have to.
Outside the contract.
Change orders.
Change
It's
orders,
within
yeah.
the contract, but it's generated by the owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to just keep it, that's just something to keep in mind, sort of it, we just don't want to state it in a blanket way because, you know, their costs can go over the price, but it needs to be typically something self-initiated by the owner.
But there's typically contingencies built into those prices as well. If they exceed that contingency, then that might be the case, but
Right.
sometimes there's an always contingency, there's a contractor's contingency of unknowns, because, you know, there are unknowns in this world, so they have to have a little bit of a fallback in case that happens.
So we're gonna.
So, sorry,
No.
are these cost estimates based off today's prices or projected prices when we go out to bid in 2 or 3 years?
That's correct. They have escalation built into that. It will like to come back to that in a moment on the next slide, just for a comparison. Well, I'm not,
I just wanted to close the loop when that CMR versus DBV decision is gonna happen, because there's a lot of numbers up here and we can get rid of half of them pretty much. So essentially, we're looking at, after we submit the PFR, the proposed schematic report in early December, that's where we're gonna come to you all and say, hey, which one would you rather pursue? So we can narrow down a bit. So we're not looking at both options for procurement going forward. So it'll be another deeper discussion, more, what you heard today was pretty high level, but we do have reason for both, and looking forward to the discussion at that point. So it will be narrowed down December, January, let's put it that way.
And the MSBA weighs in on it too. So they're part of the process.
What was the escalation clause percentage increase over the next few years?
I don't remember off the estimate. I can get back to you on that. But I can tell you right now, we're gonna look at the next slide. What the estimator gave us for a sort of a comparison is, we'll look at this for a second, go back.
Sure.
These are projects that have been approved by the MSBA, reached into schematic design. And that was their estimated cost in the last, these are all MSBA elementary schools, you know, within the last year or so. So you can see that those are the square foot. I'd like to focus on the square footage cost numbers. The project, the three estimates that we're looking at are in the, you know, 880 range on $880 a square foot on the previous slide. What the estimators told us is about $50 of that $880 a square foot represents the escalation. So if we were to subtract that $50 of escalation and say this project was bid about the same time that all these other schools, not bid, but finished ST at about the same time these were, it would be right in the middle of this pack of square footage cost. Sometimes we look at the cost of different metrics. Square footage cost is a good sort of leveling thing to look at. There's a lot of different drivers to that, difficult sites, Chuck had mentioned, or, you know, different types of construction. We can usually control, you know, the materials that go into that, size of the building. Site's a little bit more of a difficult thing to work with. So you can see, we could go back, let's go back to that last slide just in case folks have other questions. These costs, which have been have escalation built in, we are in the middle of the pack of what other districts our building for elementary schools.
If you have a question. No, yeah, okay.
And at the bottom, we talked a little bit about this, but the bottom is that row of, and with the, so you can see. There's both the cost for DVB, design bid build, or for CMR, and those blue lines there. Either way, the contribution range from the MSBA, we estimate to be these numbers that we're showing right here.
I was saying yesterday when we were collectively talking to our cost consultants, because these numbers came in yesterday. Essentially, we said, how does this, feel? Like, what's the gut check on the cost per square foot? They wrote, the building seems on par, now lower. So the numbers that we were getting for the Shaker Lane project seem on par, and they do estimates for all of Massachusetts, at least our design. So it doesn't feel strenuous as far as what we're presenting here today.
Jim, we carry 8% escalation.
Thank you.
Thanks. Gonna go to the next.
That's for a year or 8% per
So yeah,
year? I'm sorry.
it's good way construction.
About 1% of the quarter,
Thank you. Okay.
so depending on
Great. Thank you.
the years.
Does anybody have any questions on this slide?
Oh, somebody has a raised hand. Mike Pearl?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious if, so Harvard just built a new school within the last year or two. Where do they fit into this? I feel like it might be advantageous for us to list them here for a comparison, as opposed to these. I think a lot of these are much bigger than us. Obviously, square footage is similar, but I was just curious if there was any thought put into including them in this table.
We could definitely bring them into this. There, I don't know if that's published just yet. But we could certainly. We're talking about the Hilton.
The Hillsborough
School.
Elementary School, is that the one that you're speaking of?
In fact, we just toured that.
Yeah, yep, that's the one.
So
Yeah.
I believe they opened in 2021, so there was that pandemic that happened, you might remember. So we will certainly get back to you about that and have that information available. These are all within the past year, which is where these came from. So there's, especially given the state of the world in the past 5 years, it's tricky to go much further back because of just the pandemic and how that impacted construction costs and we all saw it, supermarkets and so forth, so that really changed the economy a bit. So, but we can certainly revisit that.
We can also share the numbers of the Florence Roach School that was in Groton, which is a neighbor as well. So I would say this cost is not out of line of what that project saw.
We do know actual escalation amounts from previous projects, so maybe we can put together a chart similar to this with local projects and then apply the escalation to figure out what they would have cost in today's dollars to help get a more apples to apples comparison. Everyone in West End.
I think the scale is something to consider, but also the sort of the moment in time is an important thing to. And we're building in, that's usually that is one of the big controlling factors, what's happening in the market. The labor force is available. So
I have a question. On the samples that you showed, option 1, 2, and 3. Are we talking about add-on to the current school, or are we talking about building a new school?
The first one on the first column, that's an addition and renovation, so it would keep about, was it about half of it? Just
Yeah.
under half of it. It's the new piece. So they
No,
want to build in the 80s. And then take down the old buildings and build a new classroom wing to that. So that's why we call it renovation and addition, because you have to. The thing to note about, I'm glad you asked, because this option, even though it is it's a renovation, you do have to think about it in a way, because of the energy codes that are required. The systems for this building will be all new without, even in the existing part of the building, so. Yes, parts will be kept like the existing structure, but even the envelope. The exterior walls we need to demolish because those won't pass the energy code as well. So in a way, it's like we're gonna agree to reuse the bones of part of the building and the rest is new.
Question. How is the school gonna operate when you want to do that?
Do you want to just go show that slide?
Yeah.
That might.
Ask you to state your name and your street, please.
Okay, my name is George A. Sanders, 672 Great Road. Welcome.
All right, so here's a zoomed in plan of the addition renovation option. Dashed in down here is the portion of the building that would be slated to be demolished. So essentially what would happen is number one, this new academic wing addition is built, as well as the gymnasium. Number two, these kids move into their new classrooms. So at this point, we have an empty academic wing. So all of the administrative spaces, the media center, all of these offices would move into those empty classrooms and sort of have temporary setups while their spaces are being renovated. Then, then once these are demolished, they move back in, and then we demolish that last network. But yeah, great question.
Can I just clarify that new construction, the addition, I should say the addition construction is our playground, correct?
Yes.
So
Yep.
our 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds would not have a playground, or we'd have to figure out a playground for a few years.
One other question, how's that, new, construction over there is going to tie into the septic system over there?
So right now we're exploring what the options are, and for this one, it wouldn't, the current design is sized to meet the number of students that will, the increase number of students that would be in this building. This would require approval of the Board of Health to reuse what's existing there, because the engineer that maintains the system has noted that it still has some life. Left to it. That's correct. At the same time, the reason that it's not on site right now is previous explorations of the site didn't find a spot for it. As part of this project, we're really scrubbing the rest of the site to make sure that to see if there's any possibility to put that leaching field on the existing site somewhere. So the civil engineer has identified some locations. We're testing those right now.
Thank you.
It's a possibility.
All right, so at this point, we can pass it to Steve Venuti to talk about what this means for the town.
Thank you. So one of the things that I know everybody's interested in is what's the net effect to the town? You've given a range for the MSBA numbers. So let's apply that range to the construction costs that we have. And that's what we tried to do. One of the things with debt service and the tax impacts that we're going to talk about, and just like the construction costs, really estimates. These are estimates based on those estimates. So things are going to change. They're based right now on FY24 values. FY24 value is going to be good for the next 2 days because the state is going to certify our values for FY25 within the next 2 or 3 days. So the numbers that we're going to see tonight will change then. And by the time we place this final bond, they're gonna change 4 more times. So these are truly estimates, and it's a range, but it's something that the town needs to know. Town needs to know the range, and they need to hear the impact, so they can start asking questions about those things. The debt is gonna be calculated on a 20-year bond with a 6% coupon. Who knows what interest rates are gonna be 6 years from now, 5 years from now, when we replace this bond. That's a pretty conservative number that we think. Just like any other debt that we place, it's gonna be a constant principal payment, so it pays down, principal pays down. First year debt service will be the highest that we experience, and each year after that, it will start diminishing. The other way to structure debt is to do a level payment where there's no break for the taxpayer over the life of that term. It's the same amount year after year. So we want to see that start diminishing. Probably the biggest thing is we have a split tax rate in town. There's no way that we can not only know what interest rates are gonna charge, but we're not gonna know how the select board is gonna split that tax rate year after year. So any estimates we're gonna give will be based off our assumptions for a single tax rate. When we say a single tax rate, residents can assume that it's gonna be a lesser amount. Commercial customers can figure out a higher. Okay, so this is just a single tax rate. Okay. This is just to reinforce that these are just estimates, both on the side that the construction side and for this tax side. We'll have a better idea when a year from now, we go to town meeting and ask for funding. The construction side of the MSB reimbursement side should be fixed, but the tax side is still gonna be up in the air. This will still have 3 more evaluations to go through that time. So we can certainly do estimates. That's just what they're gonna be from here on, it's estimates. We'll try to work those numbers as best we can. Maybe estimate what those estimates could be when the time comes. So those are just the caveats that I want to throw out there, just so everybody's on the same page. And let's get into some numbers. So we had the design build number, 92.2 for 2.1. What we went in and did at the MSBA 30% reimbursement, which was the low end of that range. That Studio G talked about, be 27.7, all the way up to 29.1 on 3.2. And you can see the impact to the town, 64 to 68 million dollars there. So it's quite a difference from the 92. So those MSBA reimbursements, quite important for us. It's a lot different than when we built the high school, when we got straight 51% on everything. This is different. Their reimbursement rates vary by the type of construction aspect that we're going through, site work or square footage, those types of things. So in here with all these scenarios, the design bid build of the first 2 scenarios, and the CMI at risk of the last 2, 3 options for each. The range is around 60 million to 75 million net cost to the town. It's a huge number. It's the biggest project that the town has done. Even on this net basis, it's the biggest project the town has done. On the next slide. Next slide is the tax impacts that have come up with. Again, based on the estimates, based on the valuations that we have, these numbers will change in a couple of days. First year impacts, it's the highest point that this is going to be the first year that we place this bond. It's around $1,500 to $1,850 for all the different scenarios that we have. One of the things that Studio G and Turner talked about or mentioned was the difference between CM at risk and the design bid build. the CM at risk, that 6% premium is all on the town. So MSBA doesn't pick up any portion of that CM at risk. So when the MSBA reimbursement comes through, see, it kind of says, especially on the last one where it says, based on the design bid build, it's the same number. So whatever the reimbursement is for 30% on the design bid build for each of these options, that same number was put for the CMA risk. Because there is no extra reimbursement for that extra 6%. So that increases the costs of those CMA risks net to the town. Increased costs, increased taxes.
Steve, if I can just throw in something here.
Yes, sir.
So that 6% is something that we would choose to do. And I'll just use Russell Street as an example. When Russell Street was renovated, we got like a 42.6%, I think, reimbursement from MSBA. And there was talk about the potential of maybe doing the track for that same, at the same time, on that same project, but it wasn't going to be reimbursed. We were still going to the taxpayers and saying, we need your money in order to build this stuff, so let's do it all in one fell swoop, which personally I wish we had, because we ended up going back and piecemealing all the stuff around Russell Street School. But it's similar with this 6% for the CM risk. It's something we choose to do, but it's outside of the educational value of this renovation or this building.
Steve, what is the average house value that you plugged in now? Used to be.
So on
What is it now?
600 and
I'm sorry.
672.
672. And again, that'll change in a couple of days.
Yeah.
George saying the 672 Great Lords. On that increase for the first year to 1,000, whatever it was, figure you had there. Does that include the calculation of what the state gives us for reimbursement? Because you're gonna have to
It's
put
net.
that.
That's the net number.
Yes.
The net number, okay.
Absolutely. Engineer.
Is there a possibility to go to have a 30-year bond? And spread this out more and have a less of a yearly impact?
Good question. So
Can you repeat the question?
My question was that if it was possible to take a 30-year bond and spread out the impact a little bit more.
I'll give a quick example. Ryan and I went through and looked at that a couple of weeks ago. The
Okay.
difference between 20 and 30 year. So we'll just take one of these little examples. So the Reno ad, design bid build of 92.2, MSBA reimbursement 27.7, and we have a net cost of $64 million, 64.5. We'd be placing a bond for 64.5 over 20 years. If we kept it in 20 years, the total debt service payment that we'd be making is $105 million.
Okay.
So 64, that's what. 36 plus 5, that's $41 million in interest. When we switch it to a 30-year bond, we're adding roughly was $22 million in extra interest costs.
Okay,
So
but
you're
yearly,
talking about almost as much in interest as replacing the bond.
yep,
You're extending that out over a longer period, not giving the taxpayer, you're hurting the taxpayer up front, but you're not gonna help them in the long run. We'll run the numbers and we'll look at it both ways,
yeah.
but for now, we're being as conservative as we can, and being conservative, it's a 20-year bond.
And I really, really appreciate the financial point of view that I'm thinking in terms of the home, you know, of the person who lives in town. And if you're gonna say, okay, so for 20 years, you have 1,600 extra, or for 30 years, it's maybe 1,000 extra. So, you know, like if there's actually a delta there, it makes a difference on the day-to-day life of people who live in town. And I just, I'd like to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
I understand
We have
fiscally,
6 years to figure that.
yeah, okay,
This is
Okay.
the actual last decision that we need to.
okay, awesome, thanks.
The other part of that, extending out to 30 years is, sorry, I know Brian and Karen wanted to say something. But, if we're bonded.
Yeah.
For this project,
Mhm.
30 years, we can't do any significant, we can't borrow for any project that we do on the Shaker Lake School in 30 years. Till that is paid off,
Okay,
or on council of us.
okay, good to know.
And just to think of the impact of the taxpayer too. So
Well, yeah, and
if it's,
Yeah.
if you don't have something that's decreasing fairly soon or quickly, in 20 years is quick. It's it would be hard for the town to go, it would be hard for us to go to the town and ask for additional override. Something else happens to another building.
Mhm.
God forbid we need an operating.
Mhm.
With that amount that's sitting out there from the taxpayer, it's gonna be hard for us to ask for anything additional. So the decision that we make has to be well thought out with not only the taxpayer in mind, but the needs of the town also.
Mhm.
Eric, I was trying.
What's the typical lifespan of an elementary school by MSBA standards?
Be honest.
50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a typical building.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
school, so the MSBA portion is doing it, because that's just a funding mechanism, but
Yeah, but
basically, we
I
build for
mean,
50 years.
presumably they're not seriously considering 20-year-old schools, right? They're looking at a certain age or older. So,
Right, yeah.
Well, you figure 1959 was the first part, and then 1997 was the addition. And then here we are in 2024, just to put those numbers in.
yeah, but relative to the bond.
Right.
Sort of what I'm thinking about.
And to tack on to that point, to your point, Janine, look at our other buildings. This new police station isn't so new. Our new high school isn't so new. So in 30 years, certainly, and in 20 years, we're gonna be doing this kind of project, maybe for our other 3 schools.
We're not.
Yes, well, thankfully, all we did. But,
Uh-huh.
if renovating a school is $100 million and we've got 3 other schools and a police station, a fire station, a library, all these things in 30 years. So, I think we have to bite the bullet for the 20. The question actually, Steve, I want to ask you is, do you have any sense, with all the caveats of the estimates and everything changing? So that's basically 1,800, in round numbers, 1,800 in the first year. How quickly does it tail off? I mean, what's the second year?
I really didn't analyze I was plugging through these numbers.
But historically, and you've got an idea historically. Not to put you on the spot, but, right?
Right. I'm just.
It's something that big. I tell you that the first year tax payment, debt payment on that first scenario piece was over $7 million. So.
Right. But so would it be?
It's a lot. Is the next year gonna be six, it'll be 6 and change. It's not gonna go down.
Okay, so it would be like ballparking 18 the first year, maybe 17.5, but it's going down, but it's not.
But assessed value is
steep.
going up.
What?
But assessed values are going up as well.
But also think 6 years out.
Thank you.
Six years out, potentially, this town could look a lot different than it does today.
Mhm.
And with that additional new growth that comes into town, those numbers change dramatically.
Mhm.
I saw that.
God willing.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay?
right.
Steve, are there other projects on the taxpayers? For instance, I think middle school and Russell Street are both currently on the tax rolls now. Do those come off at some point in time that'll help mitigate some of that cost for taxpayers at some point in time?
So the middle school, Russell Street and this building are all debt exclusions. I believe all three of them are there, they're starting to wind down. What we do, and you know, people at town meeting have heard this term, the debt exclusion stabilization account. And we transfer money out of there every town meeting. What we're doing is we're using inside the levy money to help offset some of this outside levy burden for the taxpayer. And we've done it successfully for the past 7, 8 years or so. And we're reducing the tax rate probably on an average of like 17 cents. Doesn't sound like a bunch, but it's something. We've already started to put money aside to do the same thing with Schaefer Lake. Last town meeting, we put aside 1.1 million. Drop in the bucket to the numbers that we see, but we still have 5 years to put some money aside. And then we have to decide as a select board and finance committee, the best use of that money, whether it's to handle it, to cover some of these debt service payments. You know, initially, until they get down to something that we can handle, or to pay construction costs and decrease the bond that we have to. We'll have to go through those numbers and see which is the better way to.
Time check, it's just a little after 8
Yep.
o'clock, and we do have another
Mike,
question.
Mike, Mike?
Yeah, I was just historically, we, in our larger projects that we've done recently in town, we do hire a CMR, correct?
That's what they said.
Yeah.
For the last two projects,
The
Mike.
library. Yeah.
Yeah, so is this slide going to be presented at town meeting?
That's the next thing on our agenda.
To be
when
determined.
it goes to the town meeting.
Okay, all right, I'll get with the program eventually. I guess my thought is that, I mean, a project this size, I think I heard it's the select board's decision to make as far as a CMR goes, but you know, I'd be shocked if we didn't use a CMR for this project. I don't know how much value those first two estimates, the top estimates we saw,
It's the
how much
building
they,
decision, Mike. The building committee's decision.
okay, all right, well, either way, I just not sure how much value those top two estimates give at town meeting. That's my only point.
So let's right, got it.
Just, I'm just wondering, since this project won't be up and running, as you say, you know, for 4 or 5 years, can we assume that the school department is going to need some extra funds for temporary classrooms or temporary accommodations for the buildings? Because, you know, we've been told it's, you know, that the school is just so crazy overcrowded, and we just live with that for 5 years. I'm just thinking that it's, in terms of looking at all the total costs, you know, that the school planning to ask for some other money to get us through the 5 years.
I can say that that wouldn't be our intent. We have been very creative. This past year, we had 11 moves in the building to create space for students, so, and for staff. So I don't foresee that being anything that, Dr. Clenchey or myself will be looking for.
Fair enough, thank you.
Joy, if you can hold off any questions until the end, we just want to get to what we're going to present at town meeting, then I get to. Okay. Why don't we, no other questions from the committee? Move on to town meeting.
All right, so we are working on the topics that are going to be discussed there. As you know, we're limited to just 10 minutes, so we need to be very impactful with what we talk about and have a good understanding about the questions that people are likely to have, so we can answer them in advance, since there is no Q&A session at this town meeting. So we are, right now, the plan is for Michelle and or Justin and or Kelly to talk about what's wrong with the existing Shaker Lane School, why we've outgrown it, why it no longer meets our needs. And then I will take over and talk about the estimated costs, which we'll be doing a comparison between what the MSBA reimburses the town versus what the town would be responsible for. We can touch on the tax burden for individual houses very briefly, with the understanding that it's estimate only. then gives those same examples from the other communities and maybe put in the other price adjusted examples of Hildreth, Florence Roach, West Acton. Maybe we can look around and find a couple others, just so that people can see where we fall in the spectrum of projects that are happening through the MSBA. Then a very brief design update. At this point, there will be a single option that we're talking about here. So we'll just show very briefly where it is on the site and what it is. And we're working on a graphic to show inside the school the special learning communities that are so different from what most people have grown up with in the schools, so that people can really understand what a modern school looks like and how different it is from what they have right now. And then we'll talk about next steps, and that will include at least 2 tours of the school that will be open to the public. We will be working on a way that people can sign up for the tours in advance, so we don't end up with too many people for the tours to really be effective. We'll also talk about other ways that people can stay informed. So really pushing the project website. There's going to be a frequently asked questions section on there that will continue to grow with the project. We'll add more questions in there as we learn more, and other ways that people can get involved to get their questions answered. Yes. But there's, we're working on a flyer to hand out at the town meeting, and it will have sort of outline what we're going to talk about. Some of the most common questions that we anticipate people will have, as well as a summary of why we've outgrown Shaker Lane. It will show that interior rendering so people can really take their time and look at it and absorb it. We'll have a QR code with a link to the project website. And not sure what else. Oh, we're going to describe a little bit about the modern teaching methods and what those actually are.
I think it been discussed, we have listening sessions at those tours.
That's the plan.
Yes.
To give a chance to people who might not be wanting to go through the technology of that, be able to express things just in person.
And we talked about potentially putting together a video, which would be a montage of photographs of the existing space with somebody talking, Michelle or Kelly, talking about the existing pool, and that can go up on the website and is available for anybody to watch if they can't make it to one of the tours.
Comments from anyone on the boards about the presentation that?
Yeah, I love your plan. I think it's a great idea to include as many visuals as possible, because the tour we took yesterday to really see the space constraints was so compelling. You know, it's I think if you can, I mean, it's one thing to say that we've outgrown this space, but to really see the impact that it has on teaching and learning it's very compelling. So I'm glad you're planning to use those images.
Good luck doing that in 10 minutes.
I know, yeah.
Just, why are we constrained to 10 minutes, and why are we constrained to not having questions? I mean, those are decisions we can revisit.
It's update the town moderator.
Tom moderator runs town meeting, so we talked to him about it. That's what he wants to do. Right. And that it also have to kind of think of also the format too, Brian. And that's, we're really using this as a launching point to have, as Steve had mentioned, other engagement events, specifically in November, that will, it's really, this is an advertisement to invite people to another event, basically.
Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess I could piggyback off Brian's comments right there. I think, you know, for example, tonight I see Mr. Sanders is there, but there's no one online. Mr. Sanders is there, no other members of the community in there. I think that potentially allowing people to ask questions at town meeting, where we'll have maybe 300 people, not a great demographic as far as the town goes, but we might be able to use that as a way to gather some of the questions and concerns that the town has as far as this project goes, and be able to get ahead of them. You know, even when we're, you know, I know there's plans to have more meetings down the line focused on just this project. But I doubt you're going to get that many people there. This might be a good opportunity to figure out what the major concerns are and, you know, strategize on how we can communicate to the community, you know, some of those concerns.
That's a great point, and we actually have two ways that people can give feedback then and there. There is a link on the website where people can let the design team and the building committee know their thoughts. It could be anything. It's open-ended question. They can ask questions, they can make statements, they can raise concerns, anything they would like to share with us, they can. And then also we are planning on having a comment box set up with paper and pens so that if people have a question right there, they can just jot it down, put it in the box, and we'll look at that. The intention is not necessarily to answer everybody's individual question, but as you say, get a read on what people are thinking about and wondering what questions that they have.
Sir, a question on the technical estimated cost. I assume that the presentation will miss the first year tax cost.
Probably the range that I had on the bottom of the sheet.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Okay, any more comments about the meeting? Well, so we're gonna have specific dates for those next two sessions.
Yes,
Yes,
those are not
we'll
decided.
finalize those.
Yeah,
Share
we
those
just,
at town.
yeah, so we'll have those dates. Because that's really what, again, that's the launching point to get to this event, or events, we're gonna do a couple.
That's probably how it should be phrased at town meeting.
Right.
Right. That's.
All right, I'm just sharing the Shaker Lane School Building Project website. On here, we have first an invitation to town meeting. This QR code on here, it links to this website actually, but it was a postcard that went out and there's been some flyers passed around here and there. Scroll down right here, click here to make your voice heard. That brings you to a form. And I'm logged into Gmail. You don't have to have a Gmail account to answer this. But what do you want the Shaker Lane project team to know? You can write anything that you want and submit it. You're not limited to just one comment. You can say as many things as you would like. And then back on the project website, this video here, it's about 6 minutes long and it does a really great overview of the MSBA process, as well as some photos of the existing Shaker Lane and just the roadmap, general information for people who might have no idea about anything that's going on. So this is a great resource for people.
And the presentation, so every presentation as we see that we've done,
Yep.
can be found here as well.
So people can get historic data.
Where's the block view? See all the
Tiles.
the options.
Work on that.
They were there. This was just updated this week, so I wonder if maybe something with the formatting.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, anything else from the committees? Mr. Sam?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment. I heard some information, but it was sort of kind of towards the tail end of this meeting here. I think the first thing that should be done, you should tell the citizens why Milton needs to build a new school. That should be first before you start throwing numbers at it as to what it's going to cost to build it. They need to understand there is a need for us to do this. And it's going to cost us. We're going to have to pay more. I think that type of data at the first of a meeting, then you can go into the numbers. People need to know why are we doing this? And I did not hear that when we started this meeting. Thank you.
You can do that.
That is the plan for sure,
You can do
and
that.
at the last meeting, that was sort of the intro and, just for keeping time to talk about costs, we can go back through that, but that's definitely the plan.
I just like to do it every time you have a meeting.
School,
It's a very-
school department will handle that at town meeting and the main voice as to why we need it.
The more you drill it, the more they remember it. That's what we're gonna have to do.
Thank you.
Gary Wilson has his hand up.
Gary? Here.
He probably bumped into it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. This is probably the best briefing that I've seen on this, that helps identify exactly, what the town, there's some expectations being set here. So I kind of want to add on to what Mr. Sanders said. I do believe, the questions that I'm getting as a select board member around town are why. They don't understand, well, what's wrong with Shaker Lane School. So I really think we hash that out in the initial meetings. I know we're early in the process, but and then obviously the very next point is what was mentioned, and that's how exactly does this affect my tax bill? Once we make the case of here's why we need it. And here's the condition of the current school, and talk about the dates and things like that. I just think this is a tough sell, and I think it probably is in any community, but I really think that the need was presented to all of us. We understand what that is, and then we can talk about the costs. So thank you, Mr. Sanders, for bringing that up.
Something that Gary touched on that just sparked something. When you talk about the next steps, you start introducing those meetings. At some point during the presentation, we should make a point in saying that we'll be back at the fall town meeting in 2025 to look for the funding and approval of the project. Get that date into people's heads.
Cite them to get more information.
That,
Robert Else, 25 Juno Road. So again, getting back to the next week's meeting, I think you really got to focus, and I appreciate everything everybody's done, but that's going to all be as given. Everybody just expects it. It's not fair. That's just how it is. So my biggest concern in feedback is how to frame it so you don't lose your voters because you need them in your successive town meetings. And so aspects that I heard about how compelling the walkthrough was, I will look towards every single gathering with regard to a very simple, I know you offer it up many ways, but I'm trying to simplify it with regard to don't make somebody go to a website. So every person that attends that walkthrough should be given a predetermined set of questions that you're looking for. Like, were you convinced were you shocked by the lack of, phrase it so it serves you well with regard to motivating your future audiences so that you can actually use it. We had 200 people walk through. We had 95% that agreed with the following thing. So I'd go that way. I'd go for the, Steve, I thought with regard to framing the aspect with regard to the question of 2-year or 30-year. I just throw it out as one example. There are other decision points, and you had numerous ones with regard to what's going to change in the coming years. So here's where we're at today. And it's early, emphasize how early. Don't minimize all the work that you've already done, but emphasize how here are the steps that are being taken that you should be tracking us on with regard to what are we doing. Your reference with regard to stabilization fund. I could get lost in the weeds. And I think I'm more capable than some to not get lost. So you can't overemphasize it, but some certain bullets with regard to you should know, audience, future voters, that we are very aware of how you're probably shell-shocked by this. And so here's what we're underway with to try to come to terms. Here's when we'll be back into some of the point that somebody just made. I think that's absolutely critical. I think that's enough. Just can't emphasize enough. Don't lose your audience, because I think if anything, if somebody walks away and hears one number, and they don't understand that they're going to be engaged or have opportunities, and I really push the residents of Littleton to force us all to get involved and get engaged, and don't let us walk away with regard to all the work.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody? We're done.
I'll just throw just relative to the Hillman School in Harvard, that was, it was a few years ago. They got reimbursed around 35%. It was roughly a $50 million project. It was a similar population, 445 students, and they got reimbursed $18.3 million. So question was asked, so it's just some data points. So, but again, a few years ago when we built our library, we built it. It was a $610 a square foot, or $640 a square foot, a lot less per square foot than it is today. And Hillman was kind of in that same time frame. They got reimbursed about 35%.
Yes. Okay. I think do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Sorry.
One second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any numbers online?
Gary's and I.
Didn't ask.
Yeah.